everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at something that I know a lot of you are thinking about a lot these days,
Mm-hmm.
artificial intelligence, or AI.
Right.
And we're going to be taking a look at this from a slightly different angle.
Yeah.
Not so much like the whiz-bang technology, but more like what are some of the implications of
Mm-hmm.
this for society and really kind of the legal side of things.
Yeah.
And we're going to be basing this on a research article that we found called
Mm-hmm.
Social and Juristic Challenges of Artificial Intelligence.
Okay.
And
I think this is going to be a good one.
yeah, I think this is really fascinating.
Yeah.
So, AI is something that we're hearing more and more about. It
Absolutely.
seems like every day.
Yeah. It's woven into our lives in
Yeah.
so many ways,
Everywhere you turn.
whether we realize it or not.
It's in our phones, it's in our cars, it's,
Yeah. Recommendations,
it's everywhere.
ads you see online.
Yep, absolutely.
It's becoming ubiquitous.
So before we go too far, I think it might make sense to step back and
Yeah.
just kind of like, what exactly are we talking about when we say AI?
Yeah. So at its core, AI is all about smart algorithms and data.
Okay.
And they work together to learn and make decisions mimicking human intelligence. And there are different flavors of AI out there.
Yeah.
Think of it like, those personalized recommendations you get on your favorite streaming service or online shopping platform.
Right.
That's AI in action.
Okay, so it's doing things like, looking at my past behavior
Exactly.
and then using that to kind of predict.
Patterns and predictions, yeah.
Okay.
Trying to figure out what you might like next.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the article actually digs a bit deeper into this
Okay.
and talks about different types of machine learning, which
Cool.
is fascinating.
So what are those different types?
So they break it down into three main categories: supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning.
Okay, I think I've heard of at least a couple of those.
Yeah. So supervised learning is kind of like, imagine you're teaching a dog a new trick.
Okay.
You give it specific commands,
Yeah.
you show it what to do,
Right.
and it learns from those examples. And that's essentially what happens in supervised learning. You feed the AI labeled data, and it learns from those specific examples.
Okay.
Then you've got unsupervised learning. This is where things get a little bit more free-flowing.
Okay.
It's like giving a kid a box of Legos and saying, go wild, build whatever you want.
Uh-huh.
So in this case, the AI explores data without those explicit instructions.
Oh, interesting.
It finds patterns, it figures out relationships on its own.
Okay, so it's kind of discovering things that
Exactly. It's making its own discoveries.
we might not even have known to look for.
Yeah. Really fascinating stuff.
Okay, and then the third one was?
Reinforcement learning. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
This is like a computer playing a video game. It learns through trial and error, figuring out what actions lead to rewards,
Yeah.
and then adjusting its strategy.
So it's getting better and better.
Exactly. It's constantly learning and adapting.
Okay, so in a way, it's kind of learning through play.
In a way, yeah. Like we do, but...
Come with data.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, fascinating stuff.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So the article, spends some time talking about all the amazing things that AI can do.
Oh, yeah.
And all of that's really interesting, but it also gets into some of the challenges.
Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of where we want to focus this deep dive is like,
Yeah.
what are some of the
potential downsides.
yeah, the kind of the flip side of this.
Yeah, the unintended consequences, perhaps.
Exactly.
Yeah, because with great power comes great responsibility, as they say.
So where do we even begin to unpack that?
Well, one of the most compelling issues that the article raises is the concept of a social dilemma.
Okay.
And these are situations where what might be good for an individual could actually harm the group, or vice versa.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's that classic conflict between self-interest and the greater good.
Like what's best for me versus what's best for everyone.
Right. And the article uses a very powerful example to illustrate this.
Yes, they do.
It talks about self-driving cars.
Yeah, which is something that a lot of people are excited about.
Right.
And for good reason.
Yeah.
But
they paint a very kind of unsettling picture.
They do.
With this example, they say, imagine a car and it's faced with this split-second decision.
Mm-hmm.
Does it harm the passenger?
Right.
Or swerve and potentially harm a group of pedestrians?
It's a terrifying thought experiment.
It is.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like, how do you even begin to program a car to make that decision?
That's $1 million question. How do you program a machine to make that kind of moral judgment?
Yeah, and who decides what the right answer even is?
Exactly, and who's liable when something goes wrong?
Right, because we're essentially talking about programming ethics.
We are.
Into a machine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to teach a computer how to play chess,
Uh-huh.
but how do you teach it to value human life?
Right. And whose values are we talking about anyway? It's
Exactly.
a very complex issue.
And, it's easy to think of this as some kind of like far off,
Yeah.
sci-fi problem, but
That's not.
these are real
It's
decisions.
happening now.
Yeah, that people are having to make right now.
Absolutely. Developers, policymakers,
Yeah.
everyday people
Yeah.
are grappling with these questions.
And it made me think about something else the article talked about.
Mm-hmm.
It talked about this idea of how cooperation has been so important for human evolution.
Yeah, it's kind of baked into our DNA
Right.
as a species to cooperate.
But at the same time, we also have this very powerful instinct for self-preservation.
Of course, survival is a powerful motivator.
Right. So, like, how do you program an AI to be truly altruistic
It's a tough one.
when we as a species, haven't even really figured that out yet?
Yeah, I mean, are we asking AI to be more human than we are?
Right.
It's a fascinating question.
And if so, like, what does that even mean?
Right. What are the implications of that?
Yeah.
It's something to really ponder.
It is, and it's a lot to wrap your head around for sure.
It is.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so we've talked about some of the social kind of dilemmas,
Mm-hmm.
but it gets even more complicated, I think,
Oh, yeah,
when you start to bring in the legal aspects of this.
absolutely. Because if we can't even agree on the ethics of AI, how do we create laws to govern it?
Exactly. Exactly. And it's like, where do you even start?
Right. Like, how do you build a legal framework for something that's constantly evolving and changing?
And so much of our legal system is based on,
Precedent.
precedents, right? And things that happened in the past.
Yeah, we're trying to apply old rules to a brand new game.
Right. And so much of that is about like
Assigning blame.
assigning blame, like who's responsible. And with
Yeah.
AI, it's like
It gets really blurry.
it gets really blurry.
Yeah.
Because you've got, the people who developed the AI,
The programmers,
Oh, right.
the companies that are using it, the people who are actually like using.
the users, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like this whole chain.
It's a chain of responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know where to draw the line.
And the article really focuses in on this one area of law called tort law,
Uh-huh.
which is basically, like personal injury.
Yeah, harm liability.
Yeah.
Who's responsible when someone gets hurt?
Right. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, how does AI kind of complicate that?
So think about a traditional product liability case.
Okay.
Let's say a defective toaster catches fire and burns someone.
Okay.
On current law, the manufacturer is often held liable regardless of whether they were negligent or not.
Okay.
It's this concept called strict liability.
Right.
But when you apply that to AI, it gets really murky.
How so?
Well, let's take a medical AI, for example.
Okay.
Imagine it misdiagnoses a patient and that leads to, further harm or even death.
Okay. Yeah.
Who's to blame? Is it the company that developed the AI?
Right.
Is it the hospital that's using it?
The doctor who's relying on
The doctor? Yeah, exactly.
is like you were saying.
Oh, it's blurred.
It's that blurred line. And
Yeah.
it's hard to know, like,
Who made the ultimate decision?
yeah, and where does the human end and the machine begin?
Right, and how much autonomy did the AI actually have?
Right.
These are all really tough questions.
And so what's the article say about, like, how we should be thinking about this?
Well, it presents a couple of different perspectives.
Okay.
Some legal scholars believe we should adapt existing legal frameworks to accommodate AI.
Okay.
They argue that we should hold AI to a reasonableness standard,
Okay.
kind of like how we judge human actions.
So, like, what a reasonable...
Yeah, would a reasonable AI...
Yes, I have done the same thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's not about perfection. It's about
Right.
acting in a way that's consistent with...
Kind of like a standard of care, almost.
Yeah, exactly. A standard of care for AI.
Okay.
But of course, this raises a whole bunch of other questions.
Like, how do you even define what's reasonable?
It's exactly. How do you define reasonable for a machine? And are we giving AI too much credit by holding it to that same standard?
Right, because that kind of assumes that it's capable of the same level of
Judgment
and, like, foresight.
Yeah, all those human qualities. Exactly.
Right.
And that's why some people argue against this approach.
Okay.
They say that holding AI to a reasonableness standard could actually discourage the development of safer AI.
How so?
Well, if companies are afraid of being held liable for every decision their AI makes,
Even if it's like a reasonable...
even if it acted reasonably,
Yeah.
they might be less likely to invest in research and development in the first place.
So it's like this weird catch-22.
It is. It's a balancing act.
Yeah, we want to hold AI accountable,
Right.
but we don't want to stifle innovation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's another perspective that goes even further.
Okay.
They argue for even stricter liability for AI.
Oh.
Yeah. This approach suggests that anyone involved in the development, deployment, and use of AI should be held responsible for any harm it causes.
Okay, so that's like,
Everyone's on the hook.
yeah, that's a very different.
It's a much broader approach.
Yeah.
It's about creating this web of accountability
Okay.
to really discourage any reckless development or deployment of AI.
So it sounds like there's no easy answers here.
Not at all.
It's like we're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole
Yeah.
with trying to apply our existing legal system
To this revolutionary
to
technology.
this thing that's so fundamentally different.
Yeah, it's uncharted territory.
And the article gives some examples of this.
Yeah, they highlight some real-world cases.
Like what?
Well, there's the example of a drone pilot who was fined for a flight that was actually commissioned by a university for research purposes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the law hadn't caught up with the reality of these AI-powered drones.
So, like, he wasn't even really in control.
Right, it was the AI making the decisions.
Yeah. Wow. And then there's the whole debate around self-driving cars.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
When something goes wrong.
Who's at fault?
Yeah, who do you blame?
The driver, the manufacturer, the software developer.
It's so murky.
It is a real legal puzzle.
And then to make things even more complicated,
Always got to add another layer.
the article throws in this idea of a black box for AI.
Oh, yeah, the black box.
What is it?
So it would be like a flight recorder on an airplane.
Okay.
It would record everything the AI does.
So it's like a record of its decision-making.
Exactly, a log of all its actions and decisions.
Okay.
Which could be incredibly valuable after an incident.
Right, you could go back and see.
You could see exactly what happened and try to figure out why.
But I imagine there'd be some concerns
Right.
about...
Yeah, privacy, big time.
Yeah.
Data security, who has access to that information.
Right, because if it's recording everything...
It's a treasure trove of data.
Yeah, it could be used for all sorts of things.
Absolutely.
So we've got this incredibly complicated... Yeah, this web of ethical and legal and technological...
It's all intertwined.
It's all intertwined.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, you know, we're still kind of in the early stages
Oh, yeah, we're just scratching the surface.
of figuring all this out.
Absolutely. This is the beginning of the conversation.
So is anyone even trying to, like, make sense of all of this?
Well, the article does point to some promising developments,
Mm.
particularly in the European Union.
Okay.
They're really at the forefront of AI regulation.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're trying to create this framework that encourages innovation,
Right.
but also protects citizens' rights and well-being.
So they're kind of trying to find that balance.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of debate about whether they're moving too fast or not fast enough.
Right. Because it's such a...
Rapidly evolving field.
It's such a moving target.
It is.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up.
So it feels kind of overwhelming, to be honest.
It can be.
It's like we're standing at the edge of this.
Vast, uncharted territory.
Yeah. And we have no map.
And the rules are being written as we go.
So what does this all mean for us?
Right? Like, how do we navigate
And
that?
for, like, the average person who's just trying to, like, live their life.
Yeah. What can we actually do?
Yeah. It does feel very much like the Wild West out there right now.
It does.
But the good news is that the article doesn't just, like, leave us hanging
No, it doesn't.
with this sense of doom.
It actually offers some practical advice.
Okay, so, like, what can we actually do?
Or one of the key takeaways is the importance of digital literacy.
Okay.
In this AI-driven world, we can't just be passive consumers of technology anymore.
Right.
We need to understand how these systems work, how our data is being used, and how AI is shaping the information we see.
So it's like we need to become fluent
Instead of
in the language of AI.
Yeah, we need to be able to read between the lines and understand the implications of this technology.
Okay, so knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
What else can we do?
Well, the article also emphasizes the importance of advocating for balanced liability standards.
Oh.
We need regulations that encourage the development of safe and beneficial AI,
Right.
but also hold developers and companies accountable for potential harms.
So we need to find that sweet spot
Exactly.
where it's not stifling innovation,
Right.
but it's also protecting people.
Yeah. It's a tough balance, but it's crucial.
And transparency, I think, is another big one.
Oh, absolutely.
We can't just trust these black boxes
In a way.
without knowing what's going on inside.
We need to know how they work,
Yeah,
what their limitations are.
how they're making decisions.
Exactly. Especially when those decisions have real-world consequences.
Yeah, because it could affect
Everything.
our health, our finances.
Our freedom.
Yeah, it's kind of scary when you think about it.
It is. But the good news is We have a say in this.
Okay, that's good.
We have the power to shape the future of AI.
So it's not just something that's being done to us.
No, we're active participants in this.
Okay.
And that brings me to perhaps the most important takeaway from the article.
Which is?
Never give up your right to decide.
Okay.
We should always have the option to say no to AI, to opt out of systems we don't trust.
The off button.
The off button should always be within reach.
I like that.
It's about empowering ourselves.
Okay. Yeah, I can get behind that.
Yeah, so this article has given us a lot to think about.
It really has.
It's a great starting point for understanding the complex world of AI and the challenges and opportunities it presents.
It's definitely a conversation that we need to keep having.
Absolutely. We need to keep asking tough questions, challenging assumptions, and working together to ensure that AI is used for good.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
My pleasure.
And thank you all for listening and for joining us on this journey of exploring the ever-evolving world of AI.